I felt her hand on my elbow, soft but firm, the kind of grip you give when you want to smile for the world but stab someone under the table. Then she leaned in, lips barely moving, voice like a pin drop in a cathedral. "Don't say you're my mom." It was the kind of thing you don't unhear. The kind that doesn't echoid implants. Deep. I stood there, wearing the dusty blue dress I spent all of April stitching by hand, the veil box still in my purse, and my knees trembling in shoes I hadn't worn in years. Not out of vanity, but because they matched the lace trim of her childhood. She was radiant. That part is true. My little Emma now was glowing in white, surrounded by orchids and draped in laughter not meant for me. It was a destination wedding in Napa Valley. I had flown in from Kentucky with a carry-on bag and 2 layovers, a small gift wrapped in old newspaper, and a heart still full of her first steps, her spelling bee trophy, the time she broke her wrist riding a neighbor's pony. But that wasn't the woman before me anymore. She had a new mother now, the kind with Botox and charity galas and thin wrists wrapped in gold. The kind who fit in with the groom's family, who understood wine pairings and Pilates and how not to bring the wrong sort of past into a perfect future. And me? I was the woman she once called Mommy when thunder frightened her. I was the woman who cut her bangs too short before picture day and made pancakes in the shape of hearts. But I was also the woman who cleaned houses when her father left. The woman who missed 3 of her piano recitals because double shifts paid better. The woman who once cried on her birthday when the lights were cut off and lied about loving candles. I was her history, and she didn't want history in her photos. The photograph-era young man with a drone, a lens the size of a small telescope, and an eye for tension clicked the shutter right as she turned her head from me. That half-second where I froze, smile still plastered, tears barely brimmed, that became permanent. Forever caught between pretending to belong and realizing I didn't. The ceremony went on. The guests applauded. People dabbed their cheeks with linen napkins and called it moving. I watched from row 5, not front. I wasn't escorted. I wasn't even acknowledged during the "thank you to our family's" toast. Her stepmother was handed roses. I was handed silence. I kept hoping she'd turn to look at me. Maybe during the father-daughter dance. Maybe when she threw the bouquet. Maybe just a glance, a flicker of memory. But she never did. It wasn't always this way. Once, she'd draw me in crayon, big smile, huge eyes, always holding hands. Once, she refused to go to sleep without a story. Once, she told her whole class her mom was a superhero. I don't know when it shifted. When I became someone she had to edit out of her narrative. After the cake had been sliced and the DJ played Bruno Mars for the 5th time, I walked out onto the terrace behind the reception hall. Alone. The night air was cooler there. Still, unapologetically honest. I slipped off the shoes that had begun to blister my feet. I sat on a wrought iron bench and watched the stars. They didn't blink. They didn't pretend. They simply were. And then I heard it. A whisper. Not hers. A child's. "Are you the lady who made the veil?" I turned. A little girl, maybe 6, stood in front of me, her curls bouncing as she pointed to the box at my feet. "Yes," I said, clearing my throat. "Yes, I made it." She sat beside me like we were old friends. "It's pretty," she said. "Like magic." That word. Magic. It used to be what Emma called everything I did. I smiled then, for real this time. "Thank you." She picked a petal from a fallen orchid and handed it to me like an offering. My mommy says real love never gets seen. It just works, quiet like ants. I laughed. A sound I didn't know was still in me. "Your mommy's smart. She says love is sometimes invisible at weddings, but it shows up after." I stayed on that bench for a long time after she left. Long after the music faded, and the lights were dimmed, and laughter was replaced by the hum of cleanup crews. At some point, the photographer passed by. He paused. "I caught a moment earlier," he said. "Between you and the bride." I bristled. "Did you?" He didn't look smug, only thoughtful. "It's haunting. Honest." I gave a short nod. She didn't want me in her pictures. He hesitated, then crouched down to my level. Funny thing about pictures. The ones people crop out often end up meaning the most later. I didn't respond. He placed a small card in my hand. "If you ever want the raw files." Sometimes people ask for the truth later. Sometimes they don't. But I save them anyway. On the flight back to Kentucky, I stared out the window as the clouds passed. I still had the orchid petal pressed between pages of my pocket Bible. I still had the veil, and used, nestled in tissue paper. I didn't cry. I'd done enough of that in my life. Instead, I rewound. I remembered the way Emma used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, the way she begged for bedtime kisses, the time she got sick at school and only wanted me. None of that gets photographed, but it lived inside me. Not cropped, not staged, just love. 2 weeks passed. The house was quiet, save for the occasional creak of floorboards expanding in the late summer heat. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't play the radio. The silence wasn't comforting, but I didn't fight it. My phone didn't ring. No messages. No updates from Emma. I didn't expect them. The veil sat folded on my dining table, the edges still faintly smelling of lavender starch. I thought about mailing it to her. No note. Just the veil. But something stopped me. Maybe pride. Maybe pain. Maybe both. Then came the knock. 3 soft raps. I opened the door, and there stood a woman in her 30s. Glossy hair, pressed shirt, clipboard in hand. "Mrs. Langley?" she asked. "Yes. I'm from Heartbridge Outreach," she said. "You applied to volunteer last year?" My mind sifted through the fog. I had. After retirement, after Emma moved away. But I never followed up. She smiled. "We're short-staffed this month. We could use some help with the elders program. You'd mostly just talk with folks. Maybe prep some meals." I stared at her a moment longer than necessary, then nodded. All right. The center was nothing fancy, an old red brick building nestled between a closed thrift store and an abandoned gas station. But inside, it buzzed with stories. War veterans, widows, women who had raised 7 children, men who still wrote love letters to wives who were no longer breathing. I was assigned to room 9, Miss Dorothy Geller. "She's quiet," they warned. "Used to be a librarian. Doesn't say much anymore." She was small, bird-like, wisps of white hair tucked behind hearing aids, fingers yellowed from tobacco and time. But when I entered her room, her eyes clouded and pale shifted toward me. "You the new one?" she asked. I smiled. "Yes, ma'am. You bring books." "No, but I can read you some." She nodded, pleased. I read to her every Tuesday and Thursday. At first, it was Steinbeck and Fitzgerald. Then she requested poetry. Dickinson mostly. But by week 3, she said something that stopped me cold. "Read me your story." I paused. "I'm not a writer." She chuckled. "Everyone's a writer when they've lived through a daughter forgetting them." My eyes flicked up from the pages. She didn't look at me, just stared out the window, as if the sky could confirm what she knew. "You too?" I asked softly. "Oh, long ago," she said. "She married rich. Sent a Christmas card last in '98. I got cropped out of the wedding photos," I whispered. She smiled faintly. "That's still a photo. I didn't even get an invite." There's a strange sort of healing in shared pain, like 2 bodies leaning against each other to keep from falling. I started spending more time at the center, not just with Dorothy, but with others. Mr. Hughes, who cried every time a piano played. Louise, who had a stack of birthday cards in her drawer, all written to herself. We didn't speak about what we'd lost in obvious ways, but it was there, in the cracks, in the silence between words. One day, Dorothy asked me, "You still talk to your girl?" "No." "You want to?" "I don't know." "You should." I swallowed. She doesn't want me in her story. She looked me dead in the eyes. "Then write a new one." Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea that had gone cold. I pulled out the card the photographer gave me. I stared at it for a long time before opening my laptop. I typed the email slowly, not editing, not censoring. To Jordan Carmichael, photographer. Subject, wedding photo. "Dear Jordan, you said you caught a moment. I'd like to see it, even if it hurts. Thank you." And Langley. The photo came the next day. It was, as he said, haunting. I stood, slightly hunched, one hand holding a tissue, the other awkwardly reaching toward Emma's back. She was turned, angled away, her eyes locked on the aisle, her lips barely parted. You could almost hear the whisper. The background was joy, color, 1,000 grins. But the foreground was quiet devastation. I stared at the photo for a long time, not crying, just absorbing. Then I printed it, framed it, and placed it beside the veil. Because pain, too, deserves a place. Not to wallow, but to remember what love costs when it's real. Weeks became months. Emma didn't call, but life, as it does, kept moving. The center asked me to speak at a local high school about caregiving. I told stories, real ones, about people whose names don't trend, whose lives aren't Instagrammable. And the kids, God bless them, they listened. really listened. Afterward, a girl approached me. Maybe 17. My grandma raised me, she said. Sometimes I forget how much she gave up. I nodded. Sometimes we all do. Even those who should remember the most. That night, I got a text. A number I didn't recognize at first. Hi, Mom. This is Emma. I saw the picture. I sat down. My hands shook. Another message followed. Jordan sent it. I didn't know you kept the veil. Still, I didn't respond. Then a third. You look beautiful. And I'm sorry. For so much. My throat tightened. I typed. Deleted. Typed again. Finally, I sent. I was there. I always was. And then, because truth is often more silent than screaming, I added nothing else. 3 weeks passed before she called. Not a message. Not a text. A call. I let it ring once. Twice. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I answered. Hi, Mom. Her voice cracked on the second word. She tried to steady it, but daughters can't always hide from mothers. Hi, I said. Just that. There was a silence, then. I didn't know what to say for a long time. Still don't. You said something, I replied. That counts. Another pause. Are you mad at me? The question hung there. A tinder wound reopened. I said quietly. But I think underneath it, I was just hurt. Deep down. And embarrassed. She let out a breath. I didn't mean to humiliate you. I know. But you did. I could feel her swallow on the other end. I think, I said slowly. The hardest part wasn't being excluded. It was realizing you thought I needed to be. I thought I was protecting you, she said. From judgment. From feeling out of place. I didn't want people to ask about the past. My past. Our past. She corrected herself, her voice soft. I closed my eyes. Emma, I sewed that veil with fingers that still ache. I picked every bead. I tried so hard to give you something beautiful, something you could wear proudly. I know, she whispered. I know now. The call lasted 32 minutes. We didn't solve everything. We didn't undo years. But we opened a door. And sometimes, that's all love needs, a crack wide enough for a second chance to slip through. That autumn, Emma came home. Not for a holiday. Not for a funeral. Just to come home. She walked through my front door holding a paper bag filled with cinnamon rolls from the bakery she used to beg for on Sundays. I didn't hug her right away. Not out of coldness. But because I wanted her to make the first move. She did. Arms around me. Face in my shoulder. I missed this smell, she murmured. The house. You. We sat in the kitchen and drank coffee. She looked older than I remembered. Thinner. A little tired around the eyes. Marriage, I wondered? Work? Life? His name's Mark, she said, as if reading my mind. He's good. Kind. He thinks I'm braver than I am. I smiled. You always were braver than you believed. She looked down. I was ashamed, Mom. Of how we grew up. Of the struggle. And that's awful, I know. But I was. I didn't want people to know I had a mom who cleaned houses. You didn't have a mom who just cleaned houses, I said, not unkindly. You had a mom who survived for you. Who bled for you quietly. Her eyes filled. I know. I see it now. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. And it's okay, I said, to have been afraid. It's not okay to stay afraid. We spent the weekend talking. Old photos. Scarred memories. Laughter where there once was none. She even asked to see the veil. It was still folded in the linen chest, untouched since Napa. Emma opened it gently, like it was sacred. It's more beautiful than I remembered, she said. You never saw it at all, I said. Not really. She smiled, a little sheepish. I was blind. I'm sorry. She lifted the veil, let it fall across her shoulders. And in that moment, something shifted. Something holy. Something whole. In December, I received a small envelope in the mail. A thank you card. Ivory, with gold foil letters. Inside, a photo. Not from the wedding. From the rehearsal dinner. Just me and Emma, seated side by side, mid-laughter. Candid. Warm. Real. On the back, in her handwriting. I want this to be the one I frame. Not because we looked perfect, but because we finally started telling the truth. The holidays came. I was invited. Not just as a guest, but as her mother. She introduced me to her friends, her in-laws. She even told a story about how I once rode my bike 6 miles in the snow to bring her antibiotics when she had strep throat. She's tougher than anyone here, Emma said. I didn't cry. Not then. I waited until I was alone in the guest bedroom and held that moment in both hands like a treasure I thought I'd lost forever. One night, While washing dishes together, Emma turned to me and said, "I want a daughter." I paused. "You'd make a good mom." "I'm scared." "You'll still be a good mom." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "Will you help me? When it happens?" I kissed her temple. "If I'm breathing, I'll be there." The center kept me busy in between visits. Dorothy passed away in January. Peacefully. I held her hand that morning. "She asked about you," the nurse told me. "Said you gave her words back." I smiled through the ache. She gave me mine too. Sometimes life doesn't offer dramatic reunions or sweeping gestures. Sometimes it gives you small, honest chances to choose again. Emma chose me, and I chose not to let bitterness win. Not because it didn't have a case, but because love deserved a longer trial. Spring returned like an old friend, quiet, familiar, and with the faint scent of hope. Emma called every Sunday now, sometimes just to talk about the weather, sometimes to ask for a recipe, sometimes to cry. Not all wounds close cleanly. Some leave tender ridges that ache when it rains. But ache is not absence. Ache means something still lives there. She came back home more often, once a month at first, then every 2 weeks. And then, in May, she called with news. "I'm pregnant." The words were shy but bright, like a candle lit in a room full of shadows. I sat in silence for a moment. Let it wash over me. "Congratulations," I said, voice soft. "Do you feel ready?" "No," she said, laughing through tears. "But I want to be, and I want you to help me get there." She came the next day, belly not yet showing, eyes wide with equal parts fear and joy. I made her soup, chicken, and rice, like I used to when she had fevers. She curled up on the couch under the same knitted blanket that once covered her in college. "I don't want to make the same mistakes I made with you," she whispered. "You won't," I said, "because now you see them. That's the difference." She reached for my hand. "Do you think my daughter will love me?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Not as a woman who once whispered me away, but as a woman trying desperately to find her way back. "If you love her first," I said, "yes." The day Emma gave birth, I was there. Not just in the waiting room. In the delivery room. She held my hand the whole time. Screamed my name when the pain rose. Clung to my wrist when she thought she couldn't keep going. And then she did. A girl. Tiny. Perfect. Loud as a thunderstorm. Emma cried. I cried. Even Mark cried. She turned to me and whispered, not shame this time but wonder. "She has your eyes." I held my granddaughter Ravri in trembling arms. Her fingers curled around mine like she already knew me. Like she'd been waiting for me, too. The first picture they took of us is still my favorite. Me, with Avery asleep on my chest. Emma beside me, one arm draped across my shoulders, the other resting on her daughter's back. 3 generations. One photo. No edits. No cropping. No pretending. I moved in for the first few months to help. Not permanently. Just enough to ease Emma into motherhood. Some nights I walked Avery around the living room while Emma slept. I hummed old lullabies. Told her stories about a little girl who once thought her mom could fix anything with a kiss. Mark was kind, gentle with Emma, respectful with me. "You raised a strong woman," he told me one evening while washing bottles at the sink. "She got there on her own," I said. "But you built the road," he added. "That matters." Summer came quickly. Avery began to smile, to grab, to coo and babble. Emma framed the veil, hung it in the nursery above Avery's crib. "I want her to know," she said, "where she comes from." One morning, I found Emma and Avery on the front porch. Emma reading aloud from a journal. Her voice shook. "I started writing letters to her," she explained. "Letters she'll read when she's older. I want her to understand all of this. Us. You." I nodded. "May I write one?" I asked. Emma handed me a pen. "Dear Avery, you don't know me yet, not really. But one day, you'll ask about pictures. You'll see photos of your mom in a wedding dress. You'll see one of me, standing a few steps behind her. You might wonder why I look sad. And that's okay. You should ask questions. Here's the truth. Your mom and I lost each other for a little while. Not completely, but enough that it hurt. Sometimes love does that. It gets scared. It hides. It makes mistakes. But real love fights its way back. And your mother did. She fought hard. She didn't have to. But she did. And that's the part one hope you carry forward. You come from women who bend but don't break. Who cry but still stand. Who lose but choose to love anyway. We are not perfect. But we are real. And I'll be here always cheering for you. Sewing your dresses. holding you when the world feels too loud. Love. Grandma. Years passed. Avery grew. She called me Grandma Annie. She liked tea parties, pirate stories, and asking impossible questions like, why do clouds cry? And do stars go to sleep? Every year on her birthday, Emma gave her one of the letters from the journal. By the time Avery turned 6, she knew that her mother had once been afraid of her past, knew that I had once been pushed out of a photo, knew that even then, I stayed. Because you loved her, she said matter-of-factly one night as I tucked her in, even when she was mean. Yes, I said, stroking her hair. Especially then. There's a framed photo in Emma's hallway now. The one the photographer took the moment I was cropped emotionally, not yet physically. Emma hung it herself. Not to remember shame, but to remember change. Above it, she placed a plaque that reads, Truth hurts. Love heals. When people ask me about my daughter now, I smile and say, she found her way home. Because sometimes, the most beautiful moments in life come not from what we never lose, but from what we're brave enough to fight to get back. I've taken thousands of photos in my life. Weddings, mostly. People smiling, people dancing, people pretending their love will last forever. Most images blur together after a while, same dresses, same flowers, same first kiss moment. But there's one I've never forgotten. A woman in a pale blue dress, standing alone, half reaching, half retreating, her face caught between a smile and something more fragile. The bride beside her, not touching, not looking, was whispering something no one else heard. I didn't know her name then, didn't know her story. All I knew was that it wasn't a moment I was supposed to catch. But I did, and it stayed with me. The wedding itself was extravagant. Napa Valley, golden hour light, orchids imported from Ecuador. The kind of event where you need a shot list 6 pages long and a backup battery for every device you own. The bride's name was Emma Langley. The planner told me she was marrying into old money, and that everything needed to look flawless. No candids of the crowd, the planner said sharply. No close-ups of guests without prior approval. Keep the camera on her. I nodded, smiled, did my job. But that's not how art works. Art doesn't wait for permission. I saw the older woman hovering near the back row of the ceremony. She wore sensible heels, a handmade dress with careful embroidery, and she clutched a small box wrapped in lace like it was the last gift she'd ever give. She smiled when Emma passed her in the aisle. Emma didn't smile back. Later, during cocktail hour, I saw the woman again alone near the vineyard's edge. She kept checking her phone. I watched her hover near Emma twice and retreat both times. And then came the moment. It was in front of the floral arch. The bride had turned toward her. The woman reached slightly forward. And then Emma leaned in, lips tight, and whispered something I couldn't hear. I pressed the shutter instinctively. I didn't know what had happened. Not fully. But you don't need sound when the silence says enough. I went home that night and uploaded the files. That photo jumped out at me, even amid thousands of polished smiles and perfect kisses. It felt wrong, but also honest. I debated deleting it. I didn't. Instead, I tucked it away in a folder I rarely touched. Unspoken moments. 3 months later, I received an email from a woman named N. Langley. The subject line was simple, wedding photo. She didn't write much. Just, you said you caught a moment. I'd like to see it, even if it hurts. I hesitated before replying. Ethics in my line of work aren't written in stone, but there's a line. You don't just hand over photos that could reopen wounds. But something in her message, something quiet and brave, told me this wasn't about blame. It was about truth. I sent her the image. A day later, she replied, "Thank you. I needed to see it to forgive it. Most clients want me to crop things. They want thinner arms, straighter teeth, to erase the drunk uncle in the background." But N. Langley didn't ask for edits. She asked for the raw file. She wanted it real. That stuck with me. Years passed. I moved out of wedding work. Started teaching photography at a community college in Oregon. Fewer bridezillas, more meaningful conversations. But I kept that photo in my archive. And every fall semester, on the first day of class, I show it. I don't explain it at first. I let the students sit with it. Some look confused. Others visibly moved. Then I ask, what's happening in this photo? The answers vary. She looks like she's being left out. The bride seems cold. The woman is trying to belong. Then I ask, what do you think happened before this photo? What do you think happened after? And that's when the room fills with stories. One girl said, maybe she was her real mom, and the bride was ashamed. A boy whispered, it looks like my grandma at my cousin's wedding. She raised him, but he never mentions her. Every time, without fail, someone in that room connects with it. Because somewhere, we all carry a moment where we were either the woman or the bride. One fall afternoon, a woman showed up at my classroom door after my lecture. She was wearing a blue cardigan, silver hair twisted in a neat knot. She held a cane in one hand and a young girl's backpack in the other. Are you Mr. Carmichael? She asked. Yes, I said, surprised. Can I help you? She handed me a small envelope. I believe you already have. I opened it. Inside was a photo. Not mine. It was a new one. 3 women, one elderly, one in her 30s, one child. All smiling. All connected. The little girl in the photo had scribbled, "My grandma is my hero," on the bottom in red crayon. She said you showed her a truth she needed to face, the older woman said. And that's what made the rest possible. I stared at the image. Then at her. You're in? She nodded, eyes damp but proud. I used to be invisible. Now I'm framed. After she left, I pinned that new photo beside the old one. Side by side. Not to compare, but to complete. The before and the after. Pain and redemption. A moment lost and a life reclaimed. People think photos are about freezing time. They're not. They're about choosing what we remember. And sometimes, the most important shots aren't the ones with confetti and cake, but the ones we're not supposed to take. The ones that catch what's real before it disappears.